I was about to cross the street after a perfect night with my son. Suddenly, a stranger yanked my arm back. "Stop, it's a trap." A truck tore past, missing me by inches. Stunned, I shouted, "Who are you? How did you know?" He leaned in, whispering, "Don't you recognize me?" When I looked closer and realized who he was, my entire world shattered in an instant. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. "You're being selfish." Matthew's voice cut through my peaceful evening. Like a blade through silk, I slowly folded my newspaper, removed my reading glasses with deliberate precision. The crackling fireplace had been my only companion moments before, casting warm shadows across the Persian rug, where my son now paced like a caged animal. Selfish. I rose from my leather chair to my full height. At 68, I still commanded 6 feet 2 inches of presence. Interesting choice of words. His Armani suit caught the firelight as he gestured with those manicured hands. Such a contrast to my work-scarred fingers. "Dad, you're 68 years old. Time to pass things to the younger generation." "Younger?" The word tasted bitter. "You mean irresponsible?" Matthew stopped pacing, his perfectly styled hair catching the glow from the street lamps visible through our Victorian windows. "I graduated Harvard. I have ideas to modernize the business." "Harvard?" As if that diploma hanging in your apartment meant anything when it came to understanding what I'd built. "Your degree doesn't teach you what 42 years of 16-hour days taught me." "Those days are over, Dad. We need fresh blood, new approaches." He stepped closer, and I caught the scent of his expensive cologne, mixing with the wood smoke from our hearth. "You can't hold on to the reins forever." My shoulders squared, military bearing from my youth surfacing like muscle memory. "I can hold them as long as I choose." "That's not fair to the company or to me." His voice rose, desperation creeping in where confidence had been. "I've been working there for 15 years. "Working?" I moved closer, claiming my territory. "You've been learning. There's a difference." The family photos on the mantelpiece watched our confrontation. Elizabeth's smiling face among them, frozen in happier times, when our son showed promise instead of entitlement. Matthew's eyes darted to them, then back to me. "I'm not some college intern anymore. I understand the business, the clients, the market trends you refuse to acknowledge." His voice cracked slightly. "With that attitude, you'll never see this company's true potential." Something cold settled in my chest. With that attitude, you'll get this company only after my death." Silence stretched between us like a chasm. The grandfather clock's ticking seemed amplified in the sudden quiet. The will." Matthew's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "The will is made out to me, right?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I studied his face, my son's face, and saw something there that chilled me more than the October night, pressing against our windows. "Yes," I said finally, "but not for much longer." I pointed toward the front door, with the same firm gesture I'd used to direct construction crews for decades. "Get out of my house." Matthew's face went pale. He took a step backward, then another. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to bring me coffee on construction sites. Then his expression hardened. "You'll regret this decision, Dad." He strode through the hallway, his footsteps echoing off the hardwood floors. The front door slammed with enough force to rattle the windows, the sound reverberating through the house like a gunshot. I remained standing, listening to his BMW roar to life in the driveway. The engine noise grew louder, then faded, as he sped away into the Boston night, leaving only the memory of burning rubber and the acrid smell of his anger. The silence felt heavier than Matthew's presence had. I stood frozen by the fireplace, shoulders still squared, as his car's engine note faded into the distant hum of Commonwealth Avenue traffic. Slowly, I let my military bearing slip away. My shoulders sagged as I walked to the whiskey cabinet, each step deliberate on the worn Persian rug. The Macallan 18 caught the firelight through its amber depths as I poured 2 fingers into a crystal tumbler. I held the glass but couldn't bring myself to drink. My hands, scarred from decades of construction work, trembled almost imperceptibly. The whiskey remained untouched as I set it on the mantelpiece and wiped my palms against my pants. Elizabeth's wedding photo smiled at me from its silver frame. "He's become everything you warned me about," I whispered to her image. The fire had burned lower now, shadows stretching longer across the room. Outside, autumn evening settled over Beacon Hill, streetlights creating pools of yellow on the sidewalk below. The grandfather clock's methodical ticking marked each second of my growing realization. Ungrateful. The word echoed in my mind as I began pacing the same path Matthew had worn minutes earlier, after everything I'd sacrificed, every weekend I'd missed, every dinner that grew cold while I worked late. To build something worth leaving behind, I stopped at the built-in bookshelves, lined with business awards and industry recognition. 42 years of building Jenkins Builds from nothing into something substantial, from a 2-man operation renovating Dorchester to a 50-employee company handling million-dollar commercial projects, and my son saw me as an obstacle to be removed. The leather armchair creaked as I sank into it, covering my face with both hands. The smell of old books and furniture polish surrounded me, familiar sense of the home Elizabeth and I had made together. Before cancer took her, before Matthew's entitlement poisoned, what should have been a legacy of pride. Maybe I was too soft with him. I admitted to the empty room. Elizabeth had warned me about spoiling our only child, about giving him opportunities without requiring him to earn them. Private schools, Harvard tuition, a guaranteed position at the company, all handed over because I'd wanted him to have everything I'd lacked growing up in Southie. The whiskey still sat untouched on the mantelpiece. I stared at it, remembering Matthew's graduation day, when I'd been so proud, so certain, that my boy would take the company to heights I'd never imagined. That pride now felt foolish, naive. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, probably heading toward Mass General, life continuing while mine felt suspended, between disappointment and resolve. The phone rang once from the kitchen, then stopped. Probably one of Matthew's friends, or maybe work calling about Monday's projects. Work, the one constant in my life since Elizabeth's death, the thing that gave meaning to my days. Jenkins Builds wasn't just a business. It was proof that a South Boston kid could build something lasting, something valuable. I pushed myself up from the chair with renewed purpose. Tomorrow I'd go to the office, think clearly without the emotional weight of this house and its memories. The company deserved better than to be handed over to someone who saw it merely as inheritance rather than achievement. Banking the fire carefully, I turned off the table lamps one by one. The house settled into darkness as I climbed the stairs, my shadow preceding me up the worn wooden steps. At the landing I paused to look back at the living room, where my relationship with my son had fundamentally changed. Tomorrow would bring clarity. Tonight, I needed rest, to process what I'd learned about the young man I'd raised. The parking lot stretched empty around my truck, a stark contrast to the usual weekday chaos of downtown Boston. I used my key card at the converted factory building's entrance, listening to my footsteps echo in the marble lobby. As the elevator carried me to the 12th floor, Jenkins Builds occupied the entire floor. Modern loft space with harbor views that still amaze me after 12 years in this location. I flipped the light switches, watching fluorescents flicker to life. Over the reception area, where Liz kept fresh flowers, and family photos of our 50 employees. Walking through the quiet office felt like touring a museum of my life's work. The project wall displayed photographs and blueprints of completed buildings, the Credential Center renovation, 3 Back Bay office complexes, dozens of residential projects that had transformed neighborhoods. In the break room, I made coffee with the ritualistic precision of someone who'd been arriving early for decades. The machine gurgled and hissed, filling the silence with familiar sounds. Outside the windows, Boston Harbor stretched gray and choppy under October's overcast sky. My corner office welcomed me, with its mahogany desk and leather chair, both gifts Elizabeth had insisted on when we'd moved here from our cramped Dorchester storefront. A successful man needs to look successful, she'd said, overriding my protests about the expense. The newspaper lay folded beside my computer, but instead of reading it, I opened the desk's bottom drawer and found what I was looking for, a small-scale model of our first house, the Dorchester triple-decker that had launched everything in 1982. I remember standing in that gutted kitchen, plaster dust coating my hair, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Elizabeth had brought me coffee every morning, that first brutal winter, her faith in my vision stronger than my own doubt. 1992, I said aloud, turning the model in my hands, started with renovating one old house that nobody else wanted to touch. The memories flowed like harbor tide, rejected loan applications, working weekends, sleeping in the van to save money on hotels when projects ran late. Elizabeth bringing lunch to job sites, picking splinters from my hands, believing in something I couldn't yet see clearly myself. Our first major contract, a Back Bay office building renovation, had felt like winning the lottery. 5 years of struggle suddenly validated by one handshake with a satisfied client who'd recommended us to others. Elizabeth's final words echoed across the quiet office. Don't let anyone diminish what you've built, Morris. This company is proof that dreams backed by work become legacy. Matthew had never understood that distinction. Dreams without work remained fantasies, while work without vision produced nothing worth inheriting. My son possessed neither the vision to see what the company could become, nor the work ethic to deserve guiding it there. Through my window, weekend sailors navigated the harbor in small boats, their white sails catching morning light. Freedom earned through understanding wind and water, not granted through birthright. The scale model felt solid in my hands, wood and glue and careful craftsmanship, just like the real buildings we'd constructed. Tangible proof that ideas could become reality. Through persistence and skill, Jenkins Builds employed 50 people who depended on careful leadership, not reckless ambition. Clients trusted us because we'd earned that trust project by project, never cutting corners or making promises we couldn't keep. That reputation couldn't be handed over to someone who viewed inheritance as entitlement. My coffee had grown cold while I'd been lost in memories. I drained the cup anyway, tasting the bitter dregs as I set the model house prominently on my desk, where I'd see it every day. Standing at the harbor window, I felt the calm that comes from understanding difficult truths. The company would survive this family crisis because it was built on something stronger than blood relationships. It was built on value created through effort. The phone started ringing in reception, probably Monday's business beginning early. I didn't answer, but the sound reminded me that Jenkins Builds would continue regardless of family drama. My resolve crystallized like harbor ice in winter, complete, unbreakable, necessary. 3 days had passed since my Saturday morning clarity. Monday's office routine had felt different somehow, productive, but tinged with melancholy. Now sitting at my kitchen table with late lunch and quarterly reports spread before me, I found my thoughts drifting toward the silence from Matthew. The rotary phone in my study began its insistent ringing, cutting through the afternoon quiet like an alarm. I glanced up from the financial projections, counting each ring while debating whether to answer. Most business calls came to my cell phone these days. 4 rings, 5, 6. I pushed back from the table and walked slowly toward the study, my hand hovering over the black receiver. On the 7th ring, I lifted it to my ear. "Hello, Dad, it's me." Matthew's voice carried a tone I hadn't heard in years, uncertain, almost humble. "Listen, I wanted to apologize for Friday night." "Matthew calling me?" I straightened in my chair, afternoon light streaming through the study windows, illuminating dust motes that danced, like my suddenly racing thoughts. "I thought you wouldn't call," I admitted, my voice more cautious than I had intended. "I was wrong to demand things from you." His words came slowly, carefully chosen. "You built that company from nothing. I had no right to act entitled to it." The family photos on my desk seemed to watch our conversation. Elizabeth's smile. Matthew's graduation picture. Happier times when we understood each other. Something loosened in my chest, a knot I'd carried for 3 days. "Well, we both said things we didn't mean that night." "Dad, tomorrow the Red Sox play the Yankees. Their last game of the season." His voice gained energy, excitement creeping in. "Want to go like old times? I know how much you love beating New York." "Baseball?" When was the last time Matthew had initiated family time? The question caught me completely off guard, hope rising despite my better judgment. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious. Meet me at the main entrance around 6:30 tomorrow evening. I'll get us good seats. Make it a proper father-son night." I found myself smiling for the first time since Friday. "Of course I agree. That's a wonderful idea, son. The last time we'd attended Fenway together was 2019, before the pandemic changed everything, when he still seemed to enjoy my company, rather than enduring it. Those games had been our tradition once, something Elizabeth encouraged, saying men needed their bonding rituals. "Great. I'll text you if anything changes, but plan on 6:30 at the main gate." After hanging up, I remained standing in the study, my reflection caught in the darkening window glass. Maybe Elizabeth had been right about patience winning him back eventually. Perhaps he just needed time to mature, to understand that family meant more than business succession plans. The Red Sox memorabilia on my bookshelf seemed to glow in the fading afternoon light. Signed baseballs, vintage programs, a photo of Ted Williams I'd treasured since childhood. Tomorrow night, Matthew and I would sit together again, rooting for our team like we used to when he was young, and thought I knew everything about the world. I walked toward the bedroom to consider what to wear tomorrow, feeling lighter than I had in months. The workday had ended 2 hours earlier than usual. I'd left the office at 4, telling Liz about my evening plans with Matthew. Her face had lit up immediately. "Morris, that's wonderful. You two haven't gone to a game together in years." Now climbing the front steps of my brownstone, with extra energy in each stride, I felt anticipation building like pressure in a steam engine. October evening air carried the crisp promise of autumn in Boston. Perfect baseball weather. In my bedroom, I opened the closet door and searched through my casual clothes. There, hanging behind dress shirts, was my faded Red Sox jersey from the 1990s. The fabric felt soft from decades of washing, memories woven into every thread. This jersey had witnessed Matthew's first game at age 12. I could still picture him in miniature Red Sox gear, eyes wide with wonder, as we walked through the tunnel into Fenway's Green Cathedral. He'd eaten 5 hot dogs that day, and felt sick during the 7th inning, but refused to leave early. My old baseball cap sat on the closet shelf, dusty but treasured, Elizabeth had bought it for me in 1995, insisting that every Red Sox fan needed proper headwear. The brim was curved exactly how I liked it, shaped by years of shielding my eyes from stadium lights. Weather forecast on my phone showed clear skies, temperature dropping to 58 there, perfect for October baseball. I selected a light jacket, warm enough for evening air, not too heavy for stadium seats. The decision came suddenly. I would walk to Fenway Park. Standing at my bedroom window, I calculated the distance from Beacon Hill to Kenmore Square, 20 minutes at most, through neighborhoods I'd known since childhood. The evening was too beautiful to waste sitting in traffic, and walking would give me time to savor this unexpected gift of reconciliation. I called Liz at the office to inform her I might arrive late tomorrow morning, depending on how late the game ran. "Enjoy every minute," she said warmly. "You deserve this happiness." Deserve. The word echoed as I prepared to leave. Did I deserve Matthew's change of heart? Perhaps patience really was a virtue, as Elizabeth always claimed. Maybe my son had simply needed time to recognize what truly mattered in life. At 5:45, I stepped onto Beacon Hill's historic sidewalks. Gaslit street lamps were flickering to life early, casting warm pools of light on brick walkways, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Children played in nearby Lewisburg Square, while dinner smells drifted from brownstone windows. The walk would take me past Boston Common, through downtown's bustle, then along Boylston Street to Kenmore. Each step carried me toward what felt like a new beginning with my son. Elizabeth would have smiled seeing me, in my old Red Sox jersey, walking to meet Matthew for a game. "Baseball brings men together," she used to say. Something about sitting side by side, cheering for the same team. At the corner of Charles and Beacon, I paused to look back at my home one last time, before disappearing into the downtown crowd. The brownstone's windows glowed golden in the dying light, solid and permanent against the changing sky. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. Tonight belonged to fathers and sons, and America's greatest game. The green monster towered above Landone Street. As I approached Fenway's main entrance, crowds of fans streamed toward the gates, a sea of red and navy mixing with occasional Yankees jerseys, worn by brave souls venturing into enemy territory. I spotted Matthew near the ticket windows, waving enthusiastically. He wore khakis and a pressed Red Sox polo shirt, more formal than my vintage jersey. But genuine enthusiasm seemed to radiate from his face. As he approached with open arms, our embrace felt natural for the first time in years. His hug lingered an extra moment, and I caught myself fighting back unexpected tears. "Dad, you look great. That old jersey brings back memories. Your mother bought this for me the year you started Little League." I adjusted the cap's brim, suddenly self-conscious. Figured it was appropriate for tonight. Matthew pulled expensive tickets from his pocket with a flourish. Section 18 right behind home plate. Best seats I could find. The price of those tickets must have been considerable, far more than Matthew usually spent on anything. His generosity surprised and touched me. As we passed through security and entered Fenway's concourse. "Remember when we used to sit in the bleachers?" I asked, gesturing toward the cheaper seats. Of course, but tonight deserves better than bleachers. This is special." Our seats exceeded every expectation. VIP section with cushioned chairs, cup holders, protection from wind. Matthew had clearly spent significant money to make this evening memorable. The gesture spoke louder than any apology could have. "Matthew, these seats must have cost a fortune." "Worth every penny to see you smile like this," he replied, signaling a vendor for hot dogs and beer. As the teams took the field for warm-ups, we settled into comfortable conversation. Matthew asked about specific players, remembered statistics I'd taught him years ago, laughed at my observations about Yankees' overpaid roster. "Dad, remember when we came here and I was 12? You explained why Fenway was special? The green monster, the triangle in center field, Pesky's pole. You ate 5 hot dogs that night and got sick. Tonight I'll limit myself to 2. Matthew laughed, and the sound transported me back 26 years, to when he was small enough to hold my hand, walking through these same concourses. The first pitch arrived at 7:07 p.m., and we rose with 40,000 other fans to cheer. Yankees took an early lead, but Matthew didn't seem discouraged. He cheered every Red Sox at bat, analyzed pitching changes, bought me another beer during the 3rd inning. By the 5th inning, Boston had rallied to take the lead, 7-4. Matthew and I stood together, high-fiving after each hit, our voices hoarse from cheering. For 3 magical hours, we weren't CEO and demanding son. We were just father and child sharing something timeless. During the 7th inning stretch, we sang Sweet Caroline with the entire stadium, Matthew's arm around my shoulders as we swayed to the music. In that moment, surrounded by thousands of voices raised in celebration, I felt complete happiness, for the first time since Elizabeth's death. "Thank you for calling yesterday," I told him, as the final out was recorded. This was exactly what I needed. Matthew smiled, but something flickered across his face, too quickly for me to interpret. We should head out before the crowd gets too thick, he suggested as fans began streaming toward exits. We stood near our seats gathering jackets, while the stadium slowly emptied around us. The field lights remained bright, grounds crew already preparing for winter storage. Dad, why don't we leave separately? I parked on the other side of Kenmore. You probably want to head straight back to Beacon Hill. The suggestion seemed practical enough. All right, son. Thank you again for tonight. It meant everything to me. Our final embrace lingered, as thousands of fans moved past us toward Yawkey Way. The crowd carried us along Yawkey Way like a river of celebrating Red Sox fans. Car horns honked victory songs throughout the Fenway neighborhood, while vendors called out final offers on team merchandise and programs. What a game, I called out over the noise, my voice raw from 3 hours of cheering. 7-4 against the Yankees. Doesn't get much better than that. Matthew walked beside me, occasionally glancing at his watch. Dad, I'm parked in the expensive lot near the corner. You sure you don't want to ride home? The October night air felt crisp and invigorating. After the warm stadium atmosphere, stars were actually visible above Boston's city lights, a rare treat for urban dwellers like ourselves. No thanks, son. The weather's perfect for walking, and I want to think about tonight while the feeling lasts. I stretched my arms, feeling more energetic than I had in months. Besides, it's only 20 minutes to Beacon Hill. We reached his BMW, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than many people's annual salaries. The expensive parking spot near Lansdowne Street had likely cost $50. Another gesture showing how much tonight meant to him. Be careful on the roads, Dad. Matthew's voice carried an edge of concern I found touching. Traffic can be crazy after big games like this. Don't worry, I'm not some helpless old man. I've been walking these streets for 40 years. I know, just humor your son's concern. All right. He pulled me into another embrace, this one lasting longer than our greeting had. I felt his arms tighten around my shoulders almost desperately, as if he were memorizing the moment. Thank you for making the first move toward fixing things between us, I whispered into his ear. Your mother would be so happy to see us like this. When we separated, Matthew's eyes seemed unusually bright. In the parking lot's harsh fluorescent lighting, he fumbled with his car keys for a moment before unlocking the BMW's door. Drive safely, I called as he slid behind the wheel. Text me when you get home so I know you made it. Okay, will do, Dad. You too. Straight home, no detours. The engine purred to life with Germanic precision, and I watched his taillights disappear into the stream of post-game traffic, flowing toward downtown Boston. For several moments, I stood in the parking lot, savoring the evening's unexpected magic. Finally, I began walking toward Lansdowne Street, breathing deeply of autumn air that carried hints of winter approaching. The familiar route home would take me, past Boston University's campus, through residential neighborhoods I'd known since childhood, finally arriving at Beacon Hill's gaslit streets. 20 minutes of peaceful walking ahead. Time to process this wonderful turn in my relationship with Matthew. Elizabeth's voice seemed to whisper in the cool breeze. Patience always wins in the end, Morris. At the corner of Lansdowne and Brookline Avenue, I paused to look back once more at Fenway Park's lights. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought, but tonight belonged to fathers and sons and second chances. I turned the corner, disappearing from view of anyone who might have been watching. From the parking area behind me, the walk through Boston's Fenway neighborhood had been everything I'd hoped for. Quiet streets lined with brownstones, the distant sound of celebrating fans gradually fading behind me, autumn leaves rustling under streetlights that cast everything in warm golden pools. I reached the intersection of Lansdowne and Brookline Avenue, feeling completely at peace with the world. The traffic light glowed red in the crisp October air, and I stopped at the crosswalk. Like any responsible pedestrian, my mind still replaying moments from tonight's magical reconciliation with Matthew. The signal changed to green. Walk symbol illuminated. I stepped forward into the crosswalk, my old Red Sox jersey visible under the street lighting, completely unaware that death was racing toward this exact spot. At 80 meters, a hand grabbed my arm with shocking force, yanking me backward just as I'd taken my first step into the intersection. Stop, it's a trap. The massive truck roared past, exactly where I would have been standing, its engine noise deafening, headlights blazing, air displacement from its passage strong enough to pull up my jacket like invisible hands. The ground actually vibrated under my feet from the vehicle's weight and speed. I stumbled backward into the stranger who'd grabbed me, both of us nearly falling from the force of my sudden reversal. The truck disappeared around the corner with screeching tires, leaving behind the acrid smell of burned rubber and diesel exhaust. What the? I gasped, my heart hammering against my ribs as the reality of what had just happened crashed over me like ice water. The man who'd saved my life steadied me with both hands, his grip firm and reassuring. He wore glasses and a navy pea coat, medium height, probably Matthew's age, with an expression of urgent determination mixed with guilt. "Are you hurt?" he asked, studying my face in the streetlight's glow. I'm alive." My voice came out as barely more than a whisper. "That truck would have killed me if you hadn't grabbed my arm." The intersection fell eerily quiet after the thunderous passage of the vehicle. No other cars approached from either direction, as if the universe had arranged this moment of near death with theatrical precision. You need to sit down," the stranger said, guiding me toward a bench near the bus stop. "You're in shock." My legs felt unsteady as we walked the few steps to the bench. The familiar weight of my Red Sox cap, the jersey Elizabeth had loved, the comfortable shoes I'd chosen for tonight's walk, all of it felt surreal now. Props in a play where someone had just tried to murder me. "How did you know?" I managed to ask, as I sat heavily on the cold metal bench. "How did you know to be here? To grab me at exactly the right moment?" The stranger sat beside me, removing his glasses to clean them with trembling fingers. When he looked at me again, I saw something in his expression that made my blood run even colder than the October night air. "Mr. Jenkins," he said quietly, "we need to talk." I stared at the man who'd just saved my life, my mind working through shock and confusion to place his familiar face. The streetlight cast harsh shadows across his features, but something about his eyes, the shape of his jaw, tugged at my memory. "Don't I recognize you from somewhere?" I asked, my voice still shaky from the near-death experience. "I'm Grover Hayes," he said quietly, replacing his glasses with deliberate precision. "Matthew's friend from Harvard. We've met a few times at company parties." The name clicked into place immediately. Grover. "Yes, of course, the lawyer. You came to our 4th of July barbecue 3 years ago." My confusion deepened. But why were you here at this exact moment?" He looked down at his hands, guilt written across his features like a confession. "Matthew told me about his plan. He hired someone to hit you with that truck." The words hit me harder than the vehicle would have. "That's impossible," I whispered, my voice breaking. "We just made peace tonight. We went to the game together. We laughed. That was part of the plan, Mr. Jenkins." Grover's voice carried the weight of terrible knowledge. "He wanted you relaxed and trusting. The baseball game, the reconciliation, all of it was calculated to make you an easier target." I felt the world tilt sideways, reality reshaping itself into something unrecognizable. The baseball game, the expensive seats, his apology, all fake. "I'm afraid so. He owes $50,000 to some very dangerous people. The only way he could pay them was—" Grover's voice trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "By inheriting my company after my death." The simple statement hung in the night air, like a death sentence delivered in reverse. My son, the boy I'd taught to throw a baseball, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose Harvard graduation had filled me with such pride, had spent this evening planning my murder while pretending to love me. "He hired a professional driver," Grover continued, each word cutting deeper. $50,000 for what would look like a tragic accident. A businessman struck down while walking home from a wonderful evening with his son. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. The Red Sox jersey that had felt so meaningful an hour ago now seemed like a costume in some grotesque performance. Every smile Matthew had shown me tonight, every laugh we'd shared, every moment I'd treasured as evidence of our healing relationship. All lies. "Why didn't you warn me sooner?" I asked, though my voice came out flat, emotionally exhausted. "I should have. I wrestled with it all day, torn between loyalty to an old friend." He gestured helplessly. "I couldn't let you die for his debts. I couldn't live with that on my conscience." The bench felt cold beneath me, autumn air cutting through my jacket, as if my body had forgotten how to generate warmth. Somewhere in the distance, normal Boston nightlife continued. Late diners, couples walking home, the ordinary rhythm of a city, unaware that a father had just discovered his son's ultimate betrayal. $50,000, I repeated numbly. That's what my life was worth to him. Grover shifted uncomfortably beside me. "Mr. Jenkins, I know this is devastating, but you need to decide what you're going to do now. Matthew doesn't know I intervened. As far as he knows, his plan failed due to some accident of timing." I sat in silence, processing the complete destruction of everything I'd believed about my relationship with my son, the company I'd built, the legacy I'd planned to leave him, the love I'd never questioned. Despite our recent conflicts, all of it reduced to a financial transaction. In Matthew's mind, something cold and hard began forming in my chest, replacing the shock and grief. My son had tried to have me killed for money. Now I needed to decide what a father does with that knowledge. I accepted the cigarette Grover offered. With trembling fingers, though I hadn't smoked in 20 years, the flame from his lighter illuminated both our faces in the darkness, creating a small circle of conspiracy under the streetlight. "Tell me everything," I said, my voice steadier now, that the initial shock had passed. "I need to understand exactly what my son planned." Grover exhaled smoke into the October air, organizing his thoughts. He approached me last Tuesday, said he had a business opportunity that required discretion. A business opportunity? The bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. My murder was a business opportunity. The debt collectors were pressuring him. Sarah had been pushing about the mortgage, the kids' private school tuition. Everything was spiraling out of control financially. Grover's voice carried the weight of confession. He thought I'd help him financially, maybe co-sign a loan. Instead, he asked you to help him commit murder. Not directly at first. He talked about accidents, about how convenient it would be if certain problems just disappeared. Grover dropped his cigarette, grinding it under his heel. When he finally spelled it out, I was horrified. Police sirens wailed in the distance, multiple vehicles responding to some emergency across the city. The sound made us both tense, though we'd done nothing wrong technically. The driver he hired, I said, forcing myself to focus on details rather than emotion. Who is he? A professional. Staged accidents for insurance fraud, usually. Matthew found him through some unsavory connections from his gambling days. Grover's glasses reflected the streetlight as he turned toward me. $50,000 for a clean hit and run. No witnesses, no evidence, just a tragic accident. Every detail felt like another nail in the coffin of my relationship with my son. How long has he been planning this? 2 weeks, maybe 3. The baseball game was his stroke of genius. Get you emotional and nostalgic. Make you want to walk home alone. Then coordinate the timing perfectly. I thought about Matthew's performance tonight. Every calculated smile. Every manufactured moment of bonding. Every manipulation of my paternal love. The expensive seats hadn't been generosity. They'd been an investment in making me a better target. Sarah knows about the debt? Yes. About the murder plot? I don't think so. She's been pressuring him to find money somehow. But I believe she thought he'd get a legitimate loan. Or a business deal. The absurdity struck me suddenly. My daughter-in-law unknowingly pressuring her husband to commit patricide over private school tuition and mortgage payments. The American dream, twisted into something monstrous. What made you decide to intervene tonight? I asked. Grover removed his glasses, cleaning them with shaking hands. This afternoon, I realized I couldn't live with myself if I let it happen. Whatever loyalty I felt to Matthew, it didn't extend to watching an innocent man die. Even knowing you'd be destroying your friendship with him. A friendship with someone who'd murder his own father? Isn't worth preserving. We sat in silence, processing the magnitude of Matthew's betrayal. Around us, Boston's night sounds continued. Distant traffic, late-night conversations from passing pedestrians, the hum of a city that had no idea. A son had tried to murder his father for inheritance money. He'll be waiting for news, I said finally. Probably checking obituaries, news reports, waiting for confirmation that I'm dead. What are you going to do? I stood up from the bench, feeling something shift inside me. Not just emotionally, but almost physically. The Morris Jenkins, who'd been a loving, trusting father, was gone forever. In his place stood someone harder, colder, more calculating. I'm going to make sure he gets exactly what he deserves, I said. Nothing. I arrived at Grover's office, dressed in my best business suit, carrying a leather briefcase containing documents I'd spent the sleepless night organizing. The Cambridge location felt appropriate, near Harvard, where Matthew and Grover had first met, where my son had learned the arrogance that eventually led him to plan my murder. Morris, come in. Grover closed his office door behind me, gesturing toward the chairs arranged around his desk. Coffee black. Thank you. I set my briefcase on the polished wood surface, noting how Grover's diplomas and ethical guidelines were prominently displayed on the walls. I've had time to think about what I want to do. The office smelled of leather-bound law books and fresh coffee, a professional sanctuary where we could conduct the legal destruction of my son's future, without emotion or sentiment clouding our judgment. I want to completely disinherit him from everything, I said, opening my briefcase to reveal current will documents, company and corporation papers, and financial statements. The company, the house, investments, he gets nothing. Grover nodded, already prepared. I have the necessary forms ready. What would you like to do with the assets instead? A charitable foundation. The Jenkins Community Foundation for Housing. The idea had crystallized during my sleepless night, Elizabeth's voice seeming to guide my thoughts. The company will continue operating, but all profits will fund affordable housing for working families. That's actually brilliant, Grover said, reviewing the documents I'd brought. It serves the community while ensuring Matthew receives exactly what he's earned. Nothing. We spent the next hour methodically dismantling Matthew's inheritance expectations. Every asset he'd assumed would be his, every dollar he'd counted on inheriting, redirected toward helping families who actually contributed to society, rather than plotting murder for financial gain. The foundation structure prevents him from contesting the will, Grover explained as we reviewed legal language. Charitable bequests are heavily protected under Massachusetts law. Good. I want this bulletproof. I signed each document with the same precision I'd used for 42 years of business contracts. How quickly can we make this legally binding? With notarization immediately. I'll arrange witnesses for Friday afternoon. Grover stamped several copies with his official seal. The bank will have the original. You'll keep copies, and I'll maintain another set in my files. Looking out his office window toward Harvard Square, I felt a strange sense of completion. The same institution where Matthew had learned to feel entitled to things he hadn't earned would now be within walking distance of the legal documents that stripped away every cent of that entitlement. About our conversation last night, I said, as we prepared final copies. Client confidentiality covers everything. Absolutely. What Matthew told me, what happened on the street, your decision today. All protected. Grover's expression was serious but relieved. You're choosing justice over vengeance, Morris. Elizabeth would be proud. The mention of my wife's name hit precisely the right note. She would indeed approve of using the company to help families rather than rewarding the son, who tried to murder me for money. Let him wait for inheritance that will never come, I said, placing signed documents back in my briefcase. While he's expecting riches, the foundation will be building homes for people who actually deserve them. We shook hands across his desk, not just lawyer and client, but two men who'd chosen to do the right thing. Despite the personal cost, Grover was losing a lifelong friend. I was losing a son. But sometimes justice requires sacrifices from the innocent, as well as punishment for the guilty. The notary office occupied a corner building in Boston's historic North End, surrounded by the kind of authentic Italian-American community that had built this city through honest work, rather than inherited wealth. I walked through the door carrying finalized foundation documents, feeling the weight of justice in my leather briefcase. Mr. Jenkins, right on time. The notary, a third-generation professional whose family had been witnessing important documents in this neighborhood for 60 years, gestured me toward his desk. I understand we have quite a few papers to make official today. I arranged the documents methodically. New will completely disinheriting Matthew. Charitable foundation and corporation papers. Company asset transfer documents. Personal property bequests to educational charities. Each paper represented another nail in the coffin of my son's inheritance expectations. Identity verification first, the notary said, examining my driver's license and social security card with professional thoroughness. Then we'll need 2 independent witnesses for the will changes. The witnesses arrived precisely at 3:15. A retired teacher and a small business owner, both chosen by Grover for their unimpeachable reputations and complete lack of connection to my family. They studied the documents carefully before adding their signatures to each page. The Jenkins Community Foundation for Housing, the retired teacher read aloud. What a wonderful legacy, Mr. Jenkins. The company will serve its true purpose, I replied, signing my name with the same steady hand that had built Jenkins Builds from nothing, building homes instead of destroying families. The notary applied his official seal to each document with ceremonial precision, the metallic stamp making permanent what my son's betrayal had made inevitable. Each impression created legal reality from my nighttime planning. Your son isn't mentioned anywhere in the new will, the notary observed professionally. That's unusual for family businesses. He's made his choices. This reflects the consequences of those choices. Standing in that small office, surrounded by the tools of legitimate legal process, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Elizabeth's death. Complete peace with my decisions. Matthew had wanted my death to make him rich. Instead, my continued life would make deserving families rich. The company he'd tried to inherit through patricide would now fund affordable housing for working families. The personal assets he'd counted on would support education for young people who understood that success required effort, not murder. All documents are properly executed and legally binding, the notary announced, handing me official copies. The foundation will receive everything according to your specifications. I placed the papers in my briefcase, with the satisfaction of a man who'd outmaneuvered an enemy without compromising his principles. Elizabeth's voice seemed to whisper approval. She'd always believed in helping others, rather than indulging family dysfunction. Outside the notary office, I paused to light a cigar in the late afternoon sunshine. Harbor air carried the salt smell of Boston's waterfront, mixing with smoke from the Cuban tobacco Elizabeth had occasionally allowed me to enjoy. Walking toward the harbor, I reflected on the elegant completeness of the justice I'd arranged. Matthew's motive for murder had been eliminated retroactively. The inheritance that drove him to hire an assassin no longer existed. The money he'd wanted would instead help families who actually needed homes. At the harbor railing, I looked out over Boston Harbor toward the horizon, where Elizabeth and I had once planned to sail together. The foundation would be her memorial as much as mine. transforming what could have been a story of family destruction into a legacy of community construction. Behind me, traffic moved through the North End's narrow streets, ordinary people going about their honest business. None of them knew that justice had just been quietly served in a small notary office, or that a son's attempt at patricide had been transformed into a father's gift to the community. The briefcase in my hand contained more than legal documents. It held the proof that sometimes the best revenge is ensuring that goodness triumphs over evil through entirely legitimate means. I finished my cigar and walked home, completely satisfied with the way moral mathematics had balanced the equation of my son's betrayal. Before saying goodbye, if this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Don't forget to subscribe for more true family betrayal stories that reminds us we are stronger than we think.